So what's new about the pad? They have new dimensions, which is 49 centimeters times 43. I'll put up a comparison on the screen real fast so you can see the difference between the Skypad 3.0, the Skypad 4.0 and the Xraypad kin. They added 3 centimeters of vertical surface area and removed 1 centimeter on the horizontal. And I would say, although this is a very small change, it's a very noticeable one for me personally, since I'm a low sense player and I have long arms. And what I do when I track is I rely a lot on resting my forearm up to about here on the mousepad, and it significantly increases my control and stability. And with the 3.0 I often found myself almost reaching the top edge of the pad trying to do this. And my solution for this was to push up the pad like this on the table. But this created this like very awkward lower gap here, which made the edge kind of dig into the edge of my arm. And yeah, at that point I wasn't really resting my forearm here. At this point I was more like hovering, which did nothing but create fucking unnecessary strain in my shoulder. So yeah, this was actually one of my complaints of the Skypad 3.0 sizes, and now I have the general freedom of resting more of my forearm on the pad, so I'm happy. I just feel like it gives me more stability when I need it. Personally, I wouldn't say no to a 50 x 50 centimeters surface area though, since I've kinda gotten spoiled by the Xraypad kin square size now. It's one of those things where you don't really think about until you've tried it for yourself. It has a new silicone backside that will basically grip the surface of your table, you know, so you can't really move the pad once you're gaming. And here's how that looks. So let's talk about the surface and compare it to the 3.0. First of all, I would like to mention that these are just my opinions and my experiences with the pad, so these are my subjective thoughts. I don't have access to any friction testing tools, so I can only go by my feeling and the scuffed glide test I did. And another thing to note is throughout the testing I have only been using these red Obsidian skates. And as we know, skates can change the feel of a mousepad significantly. Skypad sent me these, the black Obsidian dots. I don't like the dot versions. I prefer the full skate ones though, so I just put on my red Obsidians, and they perform very good. I feel like these were almost too slow for me too. And the red ones are the perfect balance in my opinion. My micro adjustments suffered a bit too much with these ones, so yeah. So I have been testing the pad for a couple of weeks now, and I would say at first touch the biggest thing I noticed was how much smoother the surface was compared to my 3.0. The glide is just so effortless and literally feels like you're moving through like a layer of oil. And the more I played, the more I noticed how I also had greater control of my aim on this pad compared to my 3.0. Consistently, both in game and in aim trainers, and every single day I tested it was the same results. I felt more locked in, my aim, my tracking overall was less wobbly, and my flicks were snappier, and the end of my flicks were also less wobbly. So do I prefer it over the 3.0? Yes, I do. If I would have to describe the difference of the two pad in like one word, just from literally my performance and how I played, I would say my 3.0 is more slippery. And it was very noticeably for me, especially in game while tracking on very long range, like a small target on long range, precise tracking. I felt more wobbly on the Skypad 3.0. There's definitely a small tiny difference in the surface there. I would say there's more dynamic friction. I can literally feel it if I just compare the pads side by side. And for those that don't know, dynamic friction is the friction you feel while you're moving across the pad. And for me personally, in game and in aim trainers, dynamic friction helps me while tracking a target that's moving pretty fast. Like he's taking a jump pad, I'm tracking a vertically bouncing ball in kovaaks. It just helps keeping my aim steady while doing that. And the fact that this pad has a tiny bit more of it compared to my 3.0 is a good thing, because the initial friction is still the same, very low. And initial friction, the friction you feel while you're initiating a movement, helps you micro adjust very effortlessly in in general on those very small and precise movements, not feeling that muddy feeling you can feel on very slow cloth pads. So if you're ever having problems with not being able to micro adjust properly, or you feel like you're getting actually stuck in the mousepad surface, you should look into getting a mousepad with lower initial friction. I just want to add one thing before I wrap this up. The surface is also smoother to the skin than my 3.0. I would never recommend to no sleeve a Glasspad personally, but if you wanna do that, if you wanna no sleeve a Glasspad, this pad is less sticky than my 3.0. And here's a comparison to the Shirenkai Mid V2. And here's a comparison to the Xraypad. So compared to the Xraypad kin, you can definitely see how much slower the kin is. I would say the kin is like Hayate Otsu speed. It has a lot of dynamic friction, but the initial friction is way lower than a lot of cloth pads. So if you like the feeling of the 3.0, but you would like a tiny bit more dynamic friction, a way smoother surface, bigger vertical surface area and a silicone base, then I would say this is a worthy upgrade. So let's talk about the sleeve. There's not much to talk about, honestly. It's good. It glides good. It sits good on my arm. I do prefer the sleeve that stops at my wrist, however, because my grip relies heavily on having the hump contact my skin here in the palm area. And it's just not the same with the sleeve covering it. I just don't get the same grip, since I have grip tape and everything here, so kind of defeats the purpose of that. And as you can see, I've tested a lot of sleeves. I have literally like fucking 8 of them. I've been through this, and these all feel pretty similar, except this one, which is the first generation Skypad sleeve. This is my main, and I always come back to this sleeve. I don't know what it is about it. It's like control, I would say, and yeah, it just performs the best out of all of my sleeves. And it's obviously personal preference, but if you want a bit more control on the Skypad with your arm and forearm, you should definitely try this sleeve. And I have this technique with this first generation Skypad sleeve, where I increase the pressure of my forearm to the surface, add more friction and slow down the glide whenever I need it. And it almost simulates the feeling of pressing down into like a soft cloth pad for more control, if you get me. And in this case, the control's coming from the sleeve rather than the surface, obviously. But none of these other sleeves does this, so it's really a unique feeling sleeve. A hidden gem, as you would say. It's kind of like a neat little trick I use to have more control on a Skypad. They don't sell these on a website anymore, but you can get one from Amazon, I'm sure. So yeah.